Indie Beacon Radio with host B Alan Bourgeois. Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Indie Beacon. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and today I have a very interesting author who has not only walked the walk in this case, but studied the walk at the same time. Welcome, JJ. Your last name is Walcutt, and I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, sir. I'm happy to be here.
Right. So, like I said, you walked the walk and you studied the walk. So why don't we start with that? Why did you choose to study what you did? I'm being a little coy here with the audience because I don't want to go too far into it right now. But why did you choose to study what you did?
Well, I think so many of us, really, regardless of where you sit on a political aisle in this country, hit 2016 and we were a little stunned. And I think stunned from two directions. We looked at the two options and said, what in the world is going on? In my house, my son actually was a junior in high school at the time. And so he was taking civics class. And he came home during spring break irate. And my child doesn't even get emotional about pretty much anything. So this was a big deal. And he said, well, what in the world is going on? How are these the best candidates that we have? And I said, well, let's look at the problem from a different perspective. I'm a scientist, so we're always trying to reframe and ask questions in different ways. I said, instead of telling me what you don't like about these two individuals, tell me what your ideal politician would look like. What would an amazing president have as attributes and experiences and capabilities? And it kind of came down to this, that you needed to be a brilliant cheerleader. You had to be somebody that could get on stage and speak in punchlines. But then when the doors were closed, you needed to be able to plan and think through tremendously difficult problems, or what we call in military, wicked problems. I said, well, good luck, Mitch, finding someone like that. And he said, well, Mom, you're like that. Could you do it? I said, yeah, no. Absolutely not. In fact, there might have been a superlative in there, which is kind of how the book got its title. I believe I said F no quite loudly. But then it became this kind of running joke. What would be your economic plan? What is it that you would do to solve homelessness for vets? How would you think about healthcare and the different parts of the country? And how would you make sure that the budget was balanced? And so for a couple of weeks, we just kind of played around with it, always having a little bit of a chuckle. And then I had an experience. I've worked with the Department of Defense for about 15 years now, and gained a lot of respect for the men and women who serve. And so one of the individuals I work with, he's a former Marine Corps, and he was telling me this story about Fallujah. It's one of the bloodiest battles that our recent military folks have been in. And during this time, he was there was a huge explosion, and he did what every Marine does. He threw off everything he had, and he started running. And then he got about halfway there and remembered, oh yeah, I'm here as a civilian this time. He had no weapons. He said, JJ, do you know the difference between a civilian and a Marine? I said, no, sir, what's the difference? He said, civilians run away and Marines run toward fire. And that was the moment where I went, man, if it's really the case that I've got some skills that would help our country understand how politics works, how government works, what's happening with budgets, why don't things seem like they're getting solved, then I better get off my arse and go do something. So I ran towards fire. I literally signed up and went and became an innovation fellow for the Department of Defense, and I was a delegate to NATO and Partnership for Peace. I redesigned the executive branch. There's a book out called Innovating Government, and we actually went through and said, what can we do to fix this place? We went on to also redesign the US education system. I can't believe all that's going on with COVID, and a lot of people don't realize we've actually done a lot of work in distributed learning to make this happen and to make it possible for people to learn anywhere, anytime. Government's been working on this for 20 years. So I learned all of these things and pulled these two books together and got those all out. And then at the end said, well, shenanigans, maybe we need to go see if there's a lot of answers out in the country, not just in government. And that started me on my big tour. And that's when I decided, well, let's run for president and see what this is like. For real.
And that's the name of your title, which is Who the F Wants to Be President? My Year Living Politically, which is about walking the walk and studying it. You learned a great deal of information, which we'll go through in the show, and we'll touch upon some of that and stuff. But as a presidential candidate, okay, what was the most important thing you got from the public?
I think the biggest thing that I learned really from Americans around the country, now I actually did physically drive all 48 states in the contiguous United States, and then I flew to Alaska and Hawaii. So I fully toured and talked to people everywhere, experts, lay people, business owners, mamas, you name it. And the number one thing I found was that we have a tremendous number of people who care and who have skill sets that we are not utilizing. So I like to say, you're worth a lot more than your vote. You know, we get one day to go vote for two people that have oftentimes been predetermined by how much money they've raised. But the other 365 days times 3 years plus 364 in the fourth year, we have to be part of our communities, and we have to be able to share with everybody what we're able to do. I had a situation here in Florida. So in Florida, we get a lot of hurricanes, and it's general practice that you go out and check out the damage, and then you help your neighbors pull it together. This is now routine. We're at rinse and repeat in Orlando about this. And one of the hurricanes hit, and a lot of the trees were down. So I have a daughter that's buried about 20 minutes from here, and there's giant trees in the cemetery. So we went to go check it out. And sure enough, there were a bunch of the trees were down, the limbs were down. So my daughter and I came back to the house and got some cutting shears so we could go help. When we got back, we had a professional backhoe. We had the professional chainsaws. I mean, there were 25 people in the cemetery just volunteering to help. And I said to the guy, you know, it doesn't take an act of Congress to fix this country. It just takes a lot of dedicated Americans to work together. We didn't wait for funding. We didn't wait for approval. We didn't go talk to somebody to try and get somebody else to take care of it. We just all pitched in. And I saw it everywhere across the country.
So in that respect, I'm assuming the term grassroots was really applied. And you saw that a lot. And you have what's called the whiteboard, and we'll get to that in a moment. But you really had a chance to talk to a lot of people who are actually, as I said, doing the grassroots work and getting in there and getting it done. That must have been really awe-inspiring in some ways.
Yeah, it was interesting. Actually, we talk a lot about this in the book because grassroots is it's a bit of a misnomer. What actually happens from a money perspective is that the front-running candidates spend years, decades in some cases, amassing large amounts of money. And then that money is used to fund marketing. And then that marketing goes after either single dollar donors or small amount donors. And so the number we got from the marketing groups that we worked with was 75 to 1. And what I mean by that is that Democratic candidates were spending $75 for every single dollar grassroots money they were getting. In other words, they were taking huge amount of money from large donors and then using that to give the impression that they were operating as grassroots campaigns. And that is not an accurate. So we actually go through in the book, we have 3 chapters dedicated to money because it's that involved. But we lay out how you have all these different packs. There's several different types, and then how the money amasses over time, and then how you maneuver it across, and then how you use that to give this impression of grassroots. And that's not it at all. You need to have the marketing backing that is just tremendous. So you better either have been born rich, been a business person who's wealthy, or have a lot of wealthy friends for a long time before you can even run, regardless of your skill set. So the skill set we're really going after here, of course, is fundraising, right? It's not about your ability to solve problems. It's about your ability to amass wealth.
And that's utterly amazing at 75 to 1. I mean, spending $75 just to get $1 is just, I realize from a marketing perspective, what we do, you have to spend a lot of money to get the money, but still there must be a flip somewhere that it works itself out and it becomes less in the long run.
I think it could. I think there are definitely ways, and we talk about some possible solutions in the book. But one of the big things that's going to happen is the country is going to have to wake up and start demanding that we look for folks with different skill sets and different capabilities. Essentially, what we hire right now are actors. And it doesn't matter if they're the villain or they're the princess or they're the jester. If they get on stage and sell tickets, quote unquote, then they can be part of this crew. And so it's extremely eye-opening to see how that works. And it works at every level. For example, if you want to run for president, you have to be able to file your books, your accounting, with special firms who can work with the Federal Election Committee. These firms want to have somebody who has very deep pockets that's going to earn a lot of money because they're probably going to take a percentage. And they want somebody that's going to be in it for the next 40 to 50 years because longevity matters. So if you're coming in and you say, well, I really could do this job. And I actually told a reporter once, I said, I could do this job. I mean, I could walk into the Oval Office tomorrow and in 24 hours, I'd have a team to deploy. And he started to laugh and I said, no, I'm not joking and I'm not blowing smoke. I did my homework. I went into government and I not only know all the programs, I know the people personally that run them. And he sat back and he thought, oh my gosh, you're right. Yeah, with the team that you have available to deploy, you actually can do a great work. But nobody wants to see that on a flag. Nobody, right? And no accounting firm wants to work with you. It took me 6 months to find an accountant that I could afford to pay and that would work with me because of the status difference.
There's a lot more information that we're going to definitely get into, but right now we do need to take a break for our sponsors. We'll be right back.
I'm Rox Berkey.
And I'm Charles Brakefield. We're award-winning co-authors, Brakefield and Berkey, of the Enigma book series. There are 10 books in the series, with book number 11 planned for release in January 2020.
Each story has a central technology focus ranging from identity theft to cryptocurrency and now AI wars. These adult techno thrillers pit cyber good guys against cyber thugs across the darknet.
In our world, technology is today's weapon of choice. You can enjoy e-book format, paper, or Audible. We want your feedback.
Until the next story, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, hello there, my friends. My name is Randy James, independent voiceover producer in the Dallas, Texas area, available to write and record a 30-second commercial, much like the one you're hearing right now. It's a great way to help increase awareness and exposure to your book title. It's easy to do. Simply call me and we'll brainstorm on a few ideas, and in a few hours, I'll whip something up and send you a digital file ready to use. Remember, call or text me, Randy James, at 214-762-1942.
Welcome to IndieLector.store, an online bookstore where the discriminating reader can find award-winning books. IndieLector.store is not a big corporation, so we can give up to 80% of the sales directly to the author. Help us support them by buying a great book at IndieLector.store.
Hello, I am the author and poet Denise Bryson. I am the author of The Things That Cross My Mind, Love's Reality, both in book and audio form. I am also noted as one of the best poets of 2011. I have 2 new projects coming up. One is the Blinky series, where Blinky tells us all about our coins and our bills for our children. I also have a book coming out called Say Ye. It's quotes from Denise Bryson, just inspirational and that will help you along the way.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
And welcome back. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and we have with us JJ Walcutt, who has been talking about her run as a presidential candidate and the book that came from it. Actually, two books that have come from it. So my first question in reference to what you've done, okay, you didn't originally plan to write a book when you started out on this. So about when did you realize, there's some really good stuff here I can write about?
Well, I started taking a lot of notes in the beginning. Again, I'm a scientist, so this is just kind of how I operate, right? You want to observe the experience and figure out how that all works. My co-author, Dr. Say Schatz, who is still in the Pentagon, she and I wrote the first two books together in this subject area, and so we started talking. She says, "We got to write a book about this. We've got to pull all this information together." And so that really kind of was the impetus when we started realizing there was information here that people needed to know. It wasn't just about my experience, it was about our experience and starting to ask some hard questions, but not from a sense of partisanship or from a news perspective, but rather from an actually just serious citizen perspective. You know, a lot of people are like me, they're just pissed off Americans, and we don't know what to do. And so when I started seeing patterns, like I was in Hawaii and they were doing a huge protest, and I started asking them, who's your target audience? Who's listening to your protest? Do you know how you could have stopped this decision from being made in the first place? They were protesting the one of the telescopes on sacred ground in Hawaii. And nobody knew the answer. Nobody knew how decisions were made in government. Nobody knew how to be a government employee. They didn't realize that if you were just a federal employee, not a politician, not hired to anything, you were very likely to be at the decision-making table and make a change without all of that protesting. And so everywhere I went, I saw people trying desperately to take action, but not understanding the unwritten and the game rules that exist in government. How does money move? What do all these programs do? Do most people have any idea that we have 4.5 million government and military workers? And that doesn't even begin the contractors. People don't realize things like when I was in government, we had to showcase our program. We had a science program for education and training for military worldwide. And Congress was coming, we were on the Hill, Congress was coming to come listen to us. And it was kind of like a science fair. Everybody had a booth, and then you showed what you were building with Congress's money, with American people's money. And then they were gonna parade through and come talk to us. When we got there, I said, something's not right here. This is very strange. What's going on? All of the booths, well, not all of them, but many of them had maps of the United States. I thought, well, that's strange. We're here to talk about education. And on those maps, there were all these little stars. Well, those stars indicated where they spent money on contractors. So when Congress came through, they weren't interested in what it is that you were building or how it was beneficial to the country. They were interested in whether or not you were spending money in their district. So it's very interesting as you start investigating how all of this comes together, and then you look at the individual American and realize the people who are standing on stage have been pre-chosen. Your ability to vote is limited by the folks that are on the final ballot. About a third of the states choose the individuals on the primary ballot by either single person or under 5 people committee. Meaning, if you're their friend, you're on the ballot. And who's a better friend than somebody who sends money to your state party? So this is how it works. And then we are in the position of kind of having a vote, but not entirely. So I really wanted to figure out, are there other ways to get involved? Are there ways to really rise up as citizens and actually make a difference?
Okay, so I've got 2 questions, but the first one, because you just mentioned it, what you said in many respects, especially for millennials, would probably turn them off from participating in the political life. So what do you say to them or to anyone who may feel that after hearing what you just said?
You know, I understand the frustration, honestly, but at the same time, I think, there's a handful of lessons that I've learned. One of the biggest lessons I learned is that we have decided that discussing politics is taboo. Everybody says, oh, you don't talk about politics or religion in polite conversation. And what we've actually done is created a bubble, a secure bubble around political parties and groups, allowing them to run without much oversight at all. So we think you have to vote because you have to at least keep the ball or the train moving in the right direction, but that isn't enough. So I understand that people feel frustrated that it doesn't count in the way that they would like to. In other words, they don't have the universe of people as options, but that doesn't negate the need to participate. And then you need to start showing up to the political organizations. And then you need to get educated on what the alternatives are, such as military service, government service, state service, being one of our first responders in all of the different areas that we can be in, or being part of your community and volunteering. That's how you really make change happen, but you have to know the rules.
And that's a tough part because most of us just don't and don't want to spend the time to learn. So that brings me to my next question. In your entire book, what would you say is the most important part that you want people to get?
Yeah, I think the part that I'd really like people to understand, it's a concept I call Rubik's Cube decision making. I say that because if you think about a Rubik's Cube, right, you never solve it with just one move. And every move you make has an effect on several other of the tiles. And so it's kind of like a ripple effect, right? Well, it's the same thing in government. The minute you shut down the country to keep people safe physically, you also introduce problems economically. The minute you start closing schools, you enter other problems with how is it that we're going to educate and move people from one job to another? How are we going to deal with unemployment, et cetera, et cetera? So every decision you make in government has a tenfold ripple effect. The reality of that means that everyone in the country could point to one thing or another that they agree with and simultaneously point to something else they disagree with. So you constantly have this battle of back and forth. But what I would love for people to do is recognize that, as we call it military, wicked problems, these are really hard to solve and they're very complicated. The smartest thing we can do is put the best minds we have in the country, which are not always going to be the ones that think like us, right? They're going to be the ones that are the best at their particular area, whether that's agriculture or building or engineering or science or whatever. Put those folks in those positions and encourage collaboration. The benefit of diversity is that we don't all agree, right? When everyone has the same idea in a room, then you've made no progress. But when you have differences of opinion and you're all working towards the same mission goal, then you get the best idea that will rise to the top. And then the input from everybody actually optimizes that. That's how you stay ahead of our adversarial nations like China and Russia in the Middle East. But right now we're so focused on fighting with each other, we've forgotten who the real enemy is.
I totally agree. And as you mentioned, having all those various thoughts presented, whether you agree or disagree, does give you more input and also more teamwork in the long run, because you all come to an agreement that everybody supports in some form or fashion, even if they may feel slightly off by something in it, they feel better because they participated.
Right.
Okay. So we have just about a minute left. The length of time it took you to write this was how long?
We pulled this together writing-wise in about 6 months. But we are long-term writers, and we have worked together for, goodness, almost 20 years now. So we're pretty rapid fire.
But you were on the campaign trail for how long?
So that started, I left June 1st. I got back in November, then made the decision that we would go ahead and go to Iowa so we'd get the full experience and really try to see, especially because the Democratic Party had changed the rules where you only had to have one delegate vote. So we wanted to go and do that. That was in January. So all told, probably 8 months, not including, of course, all of the years prior. And we talk a lot about this in the book. the things I had to learn. I'm a scientist. I keep my head down, right? I had to learn to dress. I had to learn to speak. I had to learn to do a lot of things. So it's interesting from just a normal human citizen perspective, what kind of cloak you have to put on to be able to participate in these activities.
Yeah, I can imagine it was quite an experience. So you had basically 3 years worth of training to get to that 8 months, and then that 8 months of really detailed research. So that was good that you were actually able to pull all that together in 6 months. That's actually amazing in some respects. We have to take a break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back, and we've got more to talk about.
Hi, I'm Jerry Reedy, author of the book Heat in the Vegas Night. The book is a true inside story of a group of sophisticated blackjack players that take large sums of money from Las Vegas, led by one man, the boss, who trained a group of ex-college athletes from the Pacific Northwest to use a mirror to see the dealer's hole card in blackjack. The true story, stranger than fiction, is about casino espionage, teamwork, guts and determination, and courage. Find the book at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Target.
Thank you for watching or listening to Indie Beacon Radio. Our sponsor, IndieLector.store, is the only bookstore that pays authors their fair share for book sales. Help authors to succeed and enjoy a great book by supporting them at IndieLector.store. Enjoy a 10% discount with coupon code SHOPPER20 at IndieLector.store. Coupon valid until December 31st, 2020. That's IndieLector.store, coupon code SHOPPER20.
The 5th Annual Authors Marketing Event. 2 days of live seminars in marketing for authors. The only organization that certifies authors in marketing. Live and free to the first 100 authors registered. Sponsored by Bubblish, empowering entrepreneurs. And Indie Lector Store, paying authors for their fair share. Head to www.2020.authorsmarketingguild.com today.
What started as a love letter to her son has become an international love letter for all parents to their children. Now you can read acclaimed author Shanalee Charbonneau's story to your children. When her son was very sick, she calmed him by singing her own song to him. She turned that song into the book, My Mama Loves Me, I'm Her Little Boy. She wrote 3 more magical books for all parents and kids 6 and under. Available at Indie Lector, Amazon, and all local and national outlets.
Authors Marketing Guild is a membership-owned organization designed to help authors succeed and learn how to better market and sell themselves and their books. Join us at authorsmarketingguild.com and receive so many benefits you'll wonder why you didn't join sooner. That's authorsmarketingguild.com.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
All right, welcome back. This is your host, B Alan Bourgeois, and it's really nice to have JJ Walcutt here with us, who once ran for president of the United States. And through all of this, she keeps mentioning the fact that she's a scientist. And she's used this word, so I can use it. She calls herself a nerd, which presents a lot of imagery for a lot of people. And she made a comment earlier about learning how to present herself. So let's ask that question. How did you become from a nerd to a presidential candidate? What was that like?
Painful. I had an experience, we talk a little bit about that in the book, where I was at a conference that we're always in these meetings, and military particularly is very dry. And a captain buddy of mine comes up to me, he's like, what happened to you? Well, on this particular day, I had worn a dress someone else had bought for me. He says, you look fantastic. Yesterday, you look like you were, shopping in your grandmother's clothes, which is pretty much the way I normally dressed, right? Pair of glasses, hair and ponytail, t-shirt, jeans. And so my dress up clothes had a pair of slacks, and that was about it. You can't do that if you're going to be on camera. You can't do that if you're going to be in front of people. And you have to have a brand. I had no idea what this whole concept of having a brand was. So, of course, being the scientist I am, we had to form a committee, and we studied all the different ways people dress and how you brand yourself. And I purchased all these different clothes, and then every day I would send them out to the committee, who would then vote, and then we would keep track as to what reactions stuck. And so one of my my Twitter and my Instagram and my blog are about Red Shoes USA, because one of the signature pieces that stuck were a pair of red shoes. For better for worse, wearing those through the Pentagon never got missed. But one day there was a two-star Major General Army. She was about 4'9", 5 foot maybe. So very tiny in stature, very large in sharing the space. And I thought, oh my goodness, this woman is looking at my shoes. This is not going to be good. And she leaned over, she says, I love the shoes. And so they became my Dr. President shoes, and we stuck with them. But yes, it's very interesting. You have to learn how to smile all the time. So I had my fake paparazzi friends who would snap pictures of me while I was driving to the store. And if I had my face that didn't look, good, they would remind me, you have to have a resting, pleasant face all the time, because you never know when someone's going to take your picture. And then learning to speak in front of cameras, it's very easy to get distracted on stage. I get distracted by the paint on the wall because I'm like, wow, I wonder where that came from. Oh, I wonder if, my brain is always going somewhere. So I actually had on my phone pictures of like giant numbers of cameras so that I could learn to kind of glaze my eyes over so I didn't focus on them, so I could keep speaking and not get distracted. So I'm on my treadmill practicing this. So there were a number of things I called my American Warrior Nerd Princess training. And I applied all that we do for military training and readiness to what it would be to have the resiliency, the focus, and the capability to fire and forget all the way through the campaign trail, which I also would say is a form of theater, which is what we call combat in military.
And that actually explains why you use the term actor on stage with the major politicians and stuff, because they do have to perform for that imagery and stuff. So for the people who want to know where they can get your book, and again, the title is Who the F Wants to Be President, my year of living politically. Boy, did I mess that up. Sorry about that. Where can they find it?
So it'll be available on Amazon, and if you pick it up and want to leave a comment, Goodreads would be fantastic, because we're collecting all kinds of affirmations and questions there as well. You can also go to my website, which is www.teamjjusa.com, and if you do /, you'll get the book. If you do /nerdy truth, you can get to our podcast and YouTube channel that will be continuing, really focused on citizen innovation and how it is that we can all take action and actually help our country versus necessarily spend the energy that we are currently fighting against one another. Politicians will continue to be politicians, but now that we've shared a lot of the game rules in this book, I think it could empower a lot of us to come together and really help in absence of having to rely on Congress or the executive branch to do it for us.
Real quickly, I really want to stress the whiteboard part of your website and stuff, because there's a lot of good information in there. For you personally, do you continue to look for people to be added into the whiteboard? Is that really a good place for people who have an idea but not sure how to do it, to see if someone else is doing it? What do you tell me about it?
Yeah, so the whiteboard ideas really comes from what we do in science, right? When we have these giant problems, we start with a whiteboard and we start really kind of throwing ideas on the wall and then figure out how they all connect. And so what we wanted to do was go out into the country and really determine, are there people with solutions that we're not using? And are there problems or root issues that we're maybe ignoring? The environment was a great example. When I started going through and looking for money, there's an enormous amount of money in the federal government that's going toward the environment. And then I started talking to folks who are scientists and who are involved in nonprofits, and found there's a huge amount of citizenship and folks who aren't getting any of that money that are still doing tremendous work. But we found one very important point: nobody was connecting all of it. So the money from the federal government's going one direction, the actions for citizens and scientists are going another direction, and yet all these problems could be better solved if we came together and coordinated. So the whiteboard separates interviews from all 50 states, from experts and lay people who have great ideas, from homelessness to the environment to healthcare, et cetera, and shows how you connect each of those. Every one of those is translated to an actual plan of action that would require no additional money from Congress and require no additional laws, but instead use the citizen capabilities that we have in the country to solve our own problems. The way we're continuing that is with the Nerdy Truth podcast. And I'm continuing to find individuals with great ideas. Right now, we're interviewing folks who have ideas on how to solve issues related to COVID-19, whether that's increasing resiliency, understanding how the stock market is changing, or real estate, or even getting access to free distributed education at the collegiate or K-12 level. And so those ideas, in about 15 minutes, you can get a handle on, hey, there's stuff out there that we didn't know existed. And that gets really exciting over time.
It does, and it was really neat to see it. As you can, the audience can see, there's a lot more information that we could talk about, but unfortunately we've run way over the show time. But please check out JJ's book. It is available on Amazon and her website, and we'll have it on the screen for you throughout the show. So thank you very much, JJ, for being with us, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website.
Indie Beacon Radio with the host, B Alan Bourgeois.
Indie Beacon Radio is produced by B Alan Bourgeois for Authors Marketing Guild LLC, copyright 2020. Voiceover by Randy James, Lydia Bello, and B Alan Bourgeois. To be a sponsor of the show or for more information, please email us at info@authorsmarketingguild.com. To be interviewed for the show, please complete the form at radio.authorsmarketingguild.com. Music Always Rejoice by Ram